The development policy, infrastructure guidelines for new development, supplements the regulations set forth in the city municipal code, and particularly the Unified Development Code. City staff has developed revisions to this policy and reviewed them with various stakeholders. And the Hayes Area Planning Commission recommended approving the revised development policy at their April 17, 2017 meeting. The current development policy was last revised in 2009. Staff proposed some changes in 2015. However, since we were in the middle of updating our zoning and subdivision regulations, which resulted in adoption of the Unified Development Code, changes to the development policy were put on hold. Commissioners discussed proposed changes at the commission retreat in February. Subsequently, refined changes were presented to the Planning Commission in April and were unanimously recommended. The proposed revisions to the policy are based on changes in practice and the direction the city is headed with new development. I will point out significant changes to the policy. These first couple deal mostly with the construction of new water lines and sewer lines. First, the city would no longer pay for oversizing of water and sewer lines. The other removes the requirement to pay a fee for tapping into existing water or sewer lines. Both of these changes were at the city commissioner's request. Many of the smaller changes in the document are based on the fact that Water Resources is no longer under Public Works. Therefore, the Water Resources Director is called out in many places where the Public Works Director had previously been specified. The current policy calls for 8-inch minimum water line sizes. It makes sense to allow smaller water lines in some instances. Therefore, water lines less than 8 inches may be allowed by the Director of Water Resources in the proposed policy. The next change requires new alleys to be built of concrete if they convey stormwater. Unpaved alleys are a significant maintenance issue in the service division, and we regularly have to contend with them, particularly in times of ample precipitation, which we have recently experienced. The improvements to arterial streets would be required when the property along the arterial is substantially developed and annexed into the city. Traffic counts or road conditions warrant improvements, and sufficient funds exist to complete the improvements. Now I'll provide some details about pavement widths. Proposed street widths are narrower to reduce construction and future maintenance costs. Narrower streets also aid in traffic calming to reduce speeding. The proposed changes would allow for residential streets as narrow as 24 feet with no curb and no parking, or 30 feet in width if there is curbing and on-street parking. Note that these are minimum allowable widths. Similarly, collector streets with no curb and no parking could also be as narrow as 24 feet. This would be just like what was approved recently on 9th Street, east of Commerce Parkway in the heart of American development. Collectors with curbing and parking would be a minimum of 40 feet back of curb to back of curb, down from the 45 feet in the current policy. And arterial street widths would be based upon engineering study. There were clarifications made regarding subgrade treatments. And minimum collector street pavement thickness was increased from 8 inches to 8 inches from 7 inches in the current policy. Most recent reconstruction or repairs to collector streets have already been 8 inches. Again, arterial street pavement design would be based upon engineering study. There's also language added requiring a traffic impact study for development that would negatively impact peak hour traffic. Regarding sidewalks and stormwater, rather than restating what is already in the Unified Development Code, policy now just refers developers to the appropriate sections in the UDC. Language was inserted which allows a developer to recover some of the costs of infrastructure installation if future users connect to or benefit from said infrastructure. The burden would be on the developer to draft an agreement detailing the conditions for said reimbursement prior to project approval. The commission would be in a position to approve that agreement or otherwise. The current special assessment rate duration is 15 years in the current policy. Proposed changes would allow assessment for up to 20 years. This has been at the request of developers within the city. The section on annexation is deleted. Staff will consider a separate annexation policy in the future. And finally, a closeout section is proposed by staff to highlight an often overlooked end to the development process. So the commission has the option to approve city staff's recommended modifications to the policy. They can provide further direction, or they can do nothing. Staff's recommendation and that of the Hayes Area Planning Commission is to approve the policy as presented.